Poverty is not just a lack of money, it is a lack of vision. Napoleon Hill taught that the poor stay poor for one reason above all others. They plan for next week, not for the next decade. They trade the future for the present. They spend today's paycheck on today's pleasure, while the wealthy invest today's resources in tomorrow's freedom. If your plan doesn't extend beyond your next bill, your next weekend, or your next impulse, then your future will look exactly like your present, only old. The difference between the wealthy and the poor is not always opportunity, it is perspective. The poor ask, how can I make it through this month? The wealthy ask, how can I create something that will last for decades? One mindset is about survival. The other is about building. And as Hill would say, you cannot build anything of lasting value if all your decisions are aimed at getting through Friday. The tragedy is that short-term thinking feels safe. It feels urgent. It gives you the illusion of control. But in reality, it's a trap. It keeps you chasing paychecks instead of building assets. It keeps you working for money instead of making money work for you. It keeps you stuck in the cycle of earning, spending, and starting over because you've never given yourself the time or the strategy to break free. Napoleon Hill understood that every fortune begins in the mind of someone willing to think far beyond their immediate circumstances. The wealthy plant seeds that may take years to grow. They are willing to endure the discomfort of delayed gratification because they know that today's discipline will become tomorrow's abundance. They don't just ask, what will this do for me now? They ask, what will this do for me 10 years from now? But here's the harsh truth. Most people will never see wealth because they refuse to think in decades. They will spend every raise, every bonus, every tax return on something that fades in months instead of something that compounds for years. They will take every spare dollar and feed their present comfort instead of feeding their future freedom. And when the future arrives, they will blame the system, the economy, or bad luck, never realizing that they built their own limitations with every short-sighted choice. Wealth requires a kind of patience that most people never learn because they've been trained to crave instant results. The poor want the reward today. The wealthy are willing to plant now and harvest later. The poor seek security in the moment. The wealthy build security for the future. This is why Napoleon Hill stressed definiteness of purpose, because without a long-term aim, every short-term temptation will look like a good idea. Short-term thinking is the enemy of financial freedom. It convinces you to upgrade your lifestyle the moment your income increases instead of upgrading your investments. It tells you that saving a small amount isn't worth it, so you spend it instead. It whispers that you'll start planning later, ignoring the truth that later is built on what you do now. Over years, these small decisions become the invisible chains that keep you working for money long after you should have been free. The wealthy live by a different law, compound growth. They understand that small, consistent actions taken over years will produce results far greater than any one-time windfall. They treat every dollar as an employee. Either it's working for them, multiplying in value, or it's being wasted on things that vanish. And because they think in decades, they are willing to wait for the real payoff. But here's the truth. Thinking long-term isn't just about money. It's about identity. If you see yourself as someone who can't plan ahead, you will live paycheck to paycheck no matter how much you earn. If you see yourself as someone building a legacy, every decision you make will reflect that. You will begin to choose investments over distractions, growth over gratification, and discipline over impulse. The poor stay poor because they see time as an enemy, something they're always running out of. The wealthy see time as an ally, something that works for them if they use it wisely. Every decision you make is either putting time on your side or turning it against you. And once you understand that, you'll stop asking how to get rich quick and start asking how to get rich for good. The poor stay poor because they live in reaction, not creation. Every decision is about solving the immediate problem, not building the long-term solution. They wait until the rent is due to think about money. They wait until the car breaks down to think about maintenance. They wait until retirement is looming to think about saving. And because every choice is made under pressure, the options are always limited and expensive. Napoleon Hill knew that the wealthy flip this script entirely. They create before they need. They invest before they have to. They build systems that prevent emergencies instead of scrambling to fix them. This is why they can think in decades, because they've built enough margin in their lives to focus on strategy instead of survival. The danger of short-term thinking is that it steals from your future in ways you don't see until it's too late. Spend $100 today and it's gone forever. Invest $100 today and given time, it could grow into but most people never give their money that chance. They kill it in the moment for something that will be forgotten in weeks. And here's the truth. If you cannot control your impulses, you cannot control your future. Financial freedom is not about luck or even income. It's about discipline. It's about deciding that your long-term vision is more important than your short-term comfort. It's about seeing every dollar as a tool, not a toy, and using it to build something that will outlast you. The wealthy are not magicians. They simply play a different game with time. While the poor are spending today and hoping for tomorrow, the wealthy are investing today so tomorrow is already secured. And over years, the gap between those two approaches becomes so wide it looks like luck when in reality it was just planning. The poor stay poor because they confuse activity with progress. They work hard, but their effort is aimed at surviving the week, not building the decade. They put in hours, but those hours are spent in jobs, routines, and habits that have no compounding value. They run on a treadmill and wonder why they're still in the same place. Napoleon Hill understood that wealth is rarely about working harder. It's about working with a purpose that extends far beyond the present moment. It's about directing today's effort toward results you may not see for years, but which will pay you for the rest of your life. The wealthy don't just ask, "How can I get more money now?" They ask, "How can I create something that will keep paying me even when I'm no longer working?" The short-term thinker sells their time. The long-term thinker builds assets. One earns once for every hour worked. The other earns again and again. From work they did once, but designed to last. That's why the wealthy focus on ownership of skills, of systems, of investments, because ownership is what makes time work for you instead of against you. But here's the reality. Thinking in decades is uncomfortable at first. It requires faith in a future you can't yet see. It means giving up certain pleasures now for a payoff that may be years away. It means explaining to friends why you're not spending like they are, why you're investing instead of indulging, why you're building instead of burning. And if your vision isn't strong, you'll break under that pressure and go back to thinking in weeks. The poor stay poor because they choose comfort over compounding, distraction over discipline, and instant over infinite. The wealthy become wealthy because they flip those choices. And once you start making those flips, once you start planting trees you may not sit under for years, you begin to feel the shift. The stress of next week fades, replaced by the security of knowing the decade is already working in your favor. The poor stay poor because they believe time is something to be spent, while the wealthy know time is something to be invested. Every decision the poor make with money is tied to the present moment. What can I buy now? What will make me feel good now? What will solve my problem right now? But the wealthy are always asking, if I use this dollar today, what will it be worth to me tomorrow? Next year? 10 years from now? Napoleon Hill understood that money is never the real problem. It is the mind directing the money that determines the result. A short-term thinker with $1 million will lose it just as quickly as they earned it. A long-term thinker with $100 can turn it into a fortune. The difference isn't in the amount, it's in the vision guiding it. Short-term thinking creates a lifetime of starting over. You work for money, you spend it, you start again. You get a raise, you raise your expenses, and the cycle continues. No matter how much money passes through your hands, you end up right back where you started. But long-term thinking breaks that loop. It directs money into assets, skills, and opportunities that keep multiplying without starting from zero every month. And here's the harsh truth. If you cannot delay gratification, you will always be at the mercy of those who can. The wealthy understand that patience isn't weakness, it's the ultimate financial weapon. They can wait for the right investment, the right opportunity, the right time to strike. The poor sell too soon, buy too soon, spend too soon, and live with the consequences for years. The wealthy don't think about the next paycheck. They think about the next generation. They plant wealth so deep that it outlives them. And when you start thinking like that, every choice becomes sharper. Every dollar has a mission. Every habit either builds your decade or destroys it. And the longer you stay in that mindset, the more inevitable your financial freedom becomes. The poor stay poor because they mistake motion for momentum. They are constantly busy, working overtime, picking up extra shifts, juggling multiple jobs, but none of that energy is aimed at building something that lasts. They confuse making a living with creating a life. They exhaust themselves in the short term while leaving the long term empty. Napoleon Hill understood that this is the greatest trap for the working man or woman, believing that income alone is the solution. Income solves this month. Assets solve the decade. The poor focus on earning more today. The wealthy focus on owning more tomorrow. That shift in focus is what separates those who break free from those who remain trapped, no matter how hard they work. Short-term thinking feels productive because it produces immediate results. Money in your account, a bill paid, a small reward, but it's a mirage. By the time the next bill arrives, the cycle resets. The only way out is to divert some of that short-term energy into long-term building, into skills, investments, and systems that will eventually make the short-term problems irrelevant. The truth is, every dollar you earn is a choice. You can consume it, and it's gone forever. Or you can plant it, and given time, it will multiply. The poor consume without thinking. The wealthy plant without stopping. Over years, this small difference becomes an unbridgeable gap, not because one side worked harder, but because one side worked longer in the same direction. And here's the most painful reality. Every day you delay thinking in decades, you make it harder to start. Time is either your greatest ally or your most unforgiving enemy. The wealthy recruit time early and keep it working for them. The poor ignore time until it has already worked against them. If you want a different financial future, the best time to plan it was 10 years ago. The second best time is today. The poor stay poor because they see money as a way to live, while the wealthy see money as a way to grow. Every dollar in the hands of the poor becomes a transaction. It is exchanged for something temporary, often gone within days or even hours. Every dollar in the hands of the wealthy becomes an investment, whether in knowledge, in assets, or in relationships that produce returns far beyond the initial amount. Napoleon Hill understood that wealth is not built in sudden leaps. It is built in quiet, consistent choices that compound over years. But here's the problem. Compounding only works if you give it time. The poor constantly reset the clock by starting over, spending what they have, then going back to zero. The wealthy keep the clock running, letting their assets and investments work without interruption year after year. Short-term thinking feeds on emotion. It tells you to buy because you deserve it. It tells you to upgrade because you've earned it. It tells you to indulge because life is short. But long-term thinking sees the bigger truth. Life is also, and if you spend the first half of it serving your impulses, you'll spend the second half serving your regrets. The wealthy play a game most people never even see. While others chase the next paycheck, they're chasing the next decade. While others live in fear of bills, they're building streams of income that will pay those bills without lifting a finger. While others hope to retire someday, they're structuring their life so they could walk away at any moment if they chose to. But here's the reality. Anyone can switch sides in this game. Wealthy thinking is not a gift. It's a decision. It's the choice to stop trading your future for your present. It's the choice to stop asking, what do I need this week? And start asking, what do I want in 10 years and what must I do today to have it? That shift changes everything. Because the moment you start thinking in decades, you start building a life that can actually stand the test of time. The poor stay poor because they never escape the urgency of now. Every choice they make is dictated by today's emotions, today's bills, and today's desires. This urgency blinds them to the bigger picture. They don't see the compound effect of their decisions because they're too focused on immediate relief. And when you live in constant reaction to the present, the future has no chance to improve. Napoleon Hill knew that lasting wealth requires a mind that can look beyond the moment. It's not about ignoring today, it's about making today serve tomorrow. That means resisting the urge to consume every gain and instead channeling it into something that grows. It means accepting temporary sacrifice for the sake of permanent security. And it means understanding that the discomfort of discipline is far smaller than the discomfort of regret. The wealthy think like builders. They lay bricks today, knowing they won't live in the house tomorrow. They plant seeds this season, knowing the harvest is years away. They're patient, not because they enjoy waiting, but because they know time multiplies the value of every wise decision. The poor, on the other hand, think like tenants. They pay for space they'll never own, use resources they'll never see again, and live in cycles they'll never break because they've never stopped to design a way out. And until that design exists, until there's a long-term plan, no amount of hard work will produce freedom. The truth is, your financial future is being decided right now. Every dollar you touch is casting a vote for the life you have today or the life you want tomorrow. And if those votes keep going to short-term comfort, you can't be surprised when long-term freedom never arrives. The poor stay poor because they underestimate the power of compounding, not just in money but in habits, skills, and decisions. They believe that one small choice today doesn't matter, forgetting that every fortune, every empire, every legacy is built on small choices repeated over years. They spend because it feels insignificant, but a decade later, those insignificant moments have cost them the freedom they wish they had. Napoleon Hill taught that wealth is the reward for those who think far enough ahead to let time work for them. The wealthy are not obsessed with making quick gains. They are obsessed with never losing sight of the bigger game. They know that a dollar invested today is not just a dollar, it is future security, future opportunity, and future freedom. But here's the real trap. Short-term thinking disguises itself as practicality. The poor say, I can't think about 10 years from now, I have to survive this month. And that may be true for a moment, but when just surviving becomes a permanent mindset, the decade passes with nothing to show for it. The wealthy, even in hard times, carve out something for the future, no matter how small. They understand that if you wait until it's easy to plan for the long term, you will never start. The poor trade decades of possibility for moments of pleasure. The wealthy trade moments of comfort for decades of possibility. That's the difference. And once you make that mental shift, once you start thinking in decades instead of days, you'll begin to feel a power most people will never experience, the quiet, unstoppable force of time working for you instead of against you. And when you start seeing results, when you realize that the seeds you planted years ago are finally producing a harvest, you'll know it wasn't luck, it wasn't magic, and it wasn't unfair advantage. It was the law that says you will reap exactly what you plant, and you will reap it in the season you prepared for. And when you start seeing results, when you realize that the seeds you planted years ago are finally producing a harvest, you'll know it wasn't luck, it wasn't magic, and it wasn't unfair advantage. It was the law that says you will reap exactly what you plant, and you will reap it in the season you prepared for. The poor stay poor because they measure success by the next payday. If they make it to Friday without running out of money, they call it a win. But the wealthy measure success by the progress they've made toward a vision that may still be years away. They are not satisfied by making it through the week. They are building something that will outlive the week, the month, and even themselves. Napoleon Hill knew that the calendar can either be a prison or a tool. For the poor, it's a prison, marking deadlines, bills, and obligations they're constantly scrambling to meet. For the wealthy, it's a tool, a map they use to chart growth, set milestones, and track how today's decisions are shaping tomorrow's reality. The greatest shift you can make in your financial life is to stop living for the week and start building for the decade. That shift changes how you see every dollar, every opportunity, and every setback. A dollar wasted is no longer just a small mistake, it's a brick missing from the foundation of your future. An opportunity ignored is no longer just a maybe next time, it's a gap in the structure you're trying to build. And a setback is no longer the end. It's just a temporary delay on a much longer journey. Short-term thinking builds cycles. Long-term thinking builds systems. The poor live in cycles, earn, spend, repeat. The wealthy build systems, invest, compound, expand. And the difference between a cycle and a system is simple. A system keeps moving forward. A cycle brings you right back where you started. And here's the truth. Once you start thinking in decades, you will no longer fear the future. You'll welcome it because you've been preparing for it all along. You won't wonder if you'll have enough. You'll know you will because the work was done years before you needed it. That's the quiet confidence of the wealthy, and it's available to anyone willing to stop living for next week and start building for the next 10 years.